Today, we're diving into a wild story about ambition, strategy, and what happens when one company plays the game so aggressively it starts rewriting the rules for literally everybody else. We're talking about the world of humanoid robots and an emerging giant, Zhiyuan Robotics, that's basically forcing the entire industry to either adapt or, well, disappear. I mean, listen to that. That's not just some casual prediction. That's a warning shot. It perfectly sets the stakes for what's happening right now in embodied AI. A huge consolidation is coming, and this is the story of the company that lit the fuse. So, Section 1, a storm is coming. And you gotta understand, at the center of the storm isn't just some random market trend. Nope. It's one company's very specific and very, very aggressive strategy. Which brings us to Section 2, Zhiyuan's two-pronged strategy. So how are they actually doing it? How are they causing such a stir? Well, it all comes down to this devastatingly effective two-part plan. This is where the strategy gets really clever. On one hand, they went heavy, pouring a ton of capital into controlling the physical stuff, the actual supply chain. But on the other hand, they went light, making this tiny, almost surgical investment to get their hands on something maybe even more valuable, the data. Let's look at the numbers, because they really tell the story. So, for the heavy side of things, Zhiyuan dropped a staggering 2.1 billion RMB. This wasn't just buying from a supplier. This was a move to own the supplier, to control the very source of their hardware, giving them this insane power over cost and innovation. Now compare that massive number to this. For their light asset, the data play, they invested just 2.63 million RMB. I mean, think about that contrast. It is a tiny fraction of the cost, and it just perfectly shows you how brilliant this dual strategy really is. So what did that 2.1 billion actually buy them? Oh, a whole lot. For starters, they instantly skipped the painful IPO process by just acquiring a public company. Bam. They're also on track to slash their hardware costs by 30%, all while solving huge engineering problems like making robots lighter and last longer on a battery. And as a little bonus, they inherited a ready-made global client list. That's a win on multiple fronts right out of the gate. And that tiny 2.6 million investment, you could argue the payoff there was even bigger, strategically speaking. They instantly got access to real-world operational data from over 200 cities. That's a priceless resource for training their AI. It's just a masterclass in data for equity, getting a massive AI advantage without the cost or risk of building it all from scratch. Okay, Section 3, the industry's black hole. With these moves in place, Zhiyuan stops being just another competitor. They become something else. They become a resource magnet, kind of like a black hole, pulling the entire industry into their orbit. And this is how they do it. They've created this powerful, self-reinforcing flywheel. It starts with big capital, which they use to buy critical assets. Those assets then give them cheaper materials and exclusive data. That data, in turn, makes their AI smarter, which leads to better robots. And of course, better robots attract even more capital. You see, it's a cycle that is incredibly difficult for anyone else to break into. What they've built here is basically a fortress with 3 different kinds of moats around it. You've got the hard barrier, that's their control over materials, giving them that huge cost advantage. Then there's the soft barrier, that's the exclusive data, giving them an AI advantage. And finally, the capital barrier, from being a public company and making these super savvy investments. If you're a startup, trying to attack this fortress is, well, it's almost impossible. And you can literally see this black hole effect right here in the funding numbers. Over 60% of all the money in the entire embodied AI sector is now flowing to just a handful of top firms like Zhiyuan. And everyone else, the huge majority of startups, they're all left fighting for the scraps, less than 10% of the pie. Capital has become the great divider. In fact, there's now an unofficial price of admission to even play in this market. Experts are saying that if your robot company hasn't raised at least 1 billion RMB, you're going to face, quote, immense challenges just staying afloat. That is a massive barrier to entry that just wasn't there a couple of years ago. And this funding gap leads directly to a production gap. A chasm, really. On one side, you have Zhiyuan, shipping thousands of units, all with global certifications. Meanwhile, most startups can't produce more than 100.
so they can't even dream of landing the large industrial orders that are the lifeblood of this market. This mass production chasm sidelines 90% of the players right off the bat.
So, is it hopeless for everyone else? Is it just game over? Well, not necessarily, but survival now requires a totally different playbook. Welcome to Section 4, the Hedgehog's Survival Guide. The core idea here is really simple, but powerful. Stop trying to be a smaller version of the giant. Just abandon the fight to be big and comprehensive. Instead, you pour all of your energy, all of your resources into becoming absolutely irreplaceable at one very specific thing. So essential that even the giant has no choice but to work with you. And there are 3 clear paths to do this. First, you can focus on tech penetration, become the world's undisputed best at making one single component, like a critical sensor or a reducer. Second, scenario binding. You do what Yushu did. You trade your specialized niche tech to a giant in exchange for their data and market access. And third, policy arbitrage. You get clever and use government subsidies for innovative tech to fund your deep focus on that one niche.
Okay, so let's wrap this all up. Section 5, the new rules of survival. Ultimately, what this all points to is a brand new reality. The game has changed, and the great industry reshuffle is officially here.
So here's the bottom line. The key takeaway for every smaller player in this space. To survive, you really only have 2 paths. You either have to create a technological gap in one specific area that is so deep nobody can copy you, or you become an elite, indispensable partner inside a giant's ecosystem. The middle ground, trying to compete with them head-on, that's just a death sentence now. And so this leaves us with the final big question. As this whole new ecosystem takes shape, who's actually going to be left standing when the dust settles? Will it be the dominant giants like Zhiyuan? The clever, scrappy hedgehogs who find a way to thrive in their shadow? Or will most of today's startups simply become ghosts of a bygone era? The next few years are going to tell the whole story.